Hey everyone, my name is Bethany Brand, and this is my case study 1 for SPCE 638. The client I chose to do this intervention on was a 6-year-old male that was diagnosed with autism and spectrum disorder. The behavior of concern was aggression towards property. The operational definition for this was any instance of the client damaging or attempting to damage property. This included some examples would be the client throwing, kicking, tearing, or any other aggressive behavior that is not compatible with the object's function. A non-example will be the client kicking or throwing a ball in the playground. Maintaining contingencies. Aggression towards property is often observed when the client is playing and occasionally when the SD my turn, indicating the client should return to the table is placed. This included throwing blocks across the room, swiping toys off the shelves, and occasionally it was even like pushing over desks or tables or whatever he could get his hands on. Positive reinforcement was to gain attention from the therapist or peers. Physical touch from the RBT when hand over hand had to be implemented to have the client pick up the toys or given the opportunity to man for a new toy. So sometimes it was just that he didn't want what he was playing with, so he would just throw toys. So then we would then prompt him with, what do you want? What do you want to work for? And he would get access to a new toy. Negative punishment, delay in participating in the non-preferred activity. So when he would hear the SD my turn indicating that he should return to the table, he would just try to delay whatever that was in any way he could. The assessment we used was a functional behavior assessment. This was done by directly observing the client, interviewing his parents, and completing a functional assessment, a functional analysis of ABC data. Motivating operation and intervention. The motivating operation was concluded to be reinforcement from the therapist or peers when the client engaged in the behaviors. We used 2 interventions for this behavior. One would be man training. So when the behavior occurred, we would then prompt the client to use man such as look at me, play with me, or even sometimes just hey, just anything to get our attention. He was capable of mixing up the phrases we gave him, so we tried to keep them in a rotation so that he did not just get stuck with just one. We also implemented non-contingent reinforcement just to make that behavior no longer necessary at all. So every 5 minutes throughout the session, the therapist would provide the client with attention. This would be done no matter where the client was. So if he was at the DTT table, if he was at school skills, if he was in natural environment training, snack time, did not matter. We tried to give him 15 to 30 seconds of just our undivided attention, just like, hey buddy, I love the way you're playing, I love the way you're working, whatever it was, just our undivided attention every 5 minutes. And then when the client did engage in the behavior, it was completely ignored other than prompting the appropriate man. So an example would be the client throws blocks across the room, the RBT would say, you can say, play with me, and the client would then echo, play with me, and the RBT would go to the floor, completely ignoring the blocks and play with the client. On the schedule of reinforcement, so for man training, reinforcement was given when the client was compliant and echoed the therapist. So the prompt was then slowly faded out to the point where we could just look at him and say, what can you say, or something like that, and then he would then say, play with me. And then for non-contingent reinforcement, we started with giving him attention every 5 minutes, like I said. And then he mastered that pretty quickly. So then we increased this to 10 minutes. And then the next week, 15 minutes, etc., until we worked our way all the way up to 30 minutes. Generalization and maintenance. So maintenance, once the man training was mastered, reinforcement, so playing with the child, was only given once the client appropriately mandated for the therapist to do so in absence of the ATP. So if he throws blocks and demands for us to play with him, he no longer gets that. He then has to work and earn us playing with him. Non-contingent reinforcement was eventually faded out completely, and now is just spontaneously delivered throughout the session. So yeah, whenever we notice that he is being very compliant, he is doing playing with toys according to their function or doing his work quietly, we just gave him some attention. Generalization, the parent stated that the client has a lower frequency of the behavior in the home setting now. The client is homeschooled, so he does not see many different environments. He comes to ABA for 4 hours, 5 days a week. So just to help with generalization, we do have the client work with a therapist for the first 2 hours and then a different therapist for the last 2 hours. The outcome. The client showed a decrease in ATP throughout the intervention. We have worked our way up to averaging 2 to 3 occurrences per week. When the intervention started, we were averaging 10 to 12 occurrences per day. So it has significantly decreased since the intervention was implemented. Obstacles and modifications. When the intervention was first implemented, the behavior did spike. This caused us to have to clear the room before the client arrived and have him request what toys he wanted in the room with him that day. It just got to the point where he would walk in and just throw things because we were no longer giving him attention for it and he wanted it. For the safety of our clients, we were lucky enough that he never engaged in aggression towards us or his peers. So that was never something we had to worry with. But for the safety of our clients, we did have him work in a room by himself once the behavior did spike, just in case. This resulted in him not having as many opportunities for him to request attention from his peers. Eventually, our goal is to have him back in the room with his peers, but we're just doing that at a slower pace. Modification of the reinforcement schedule was also faded throughout the intervention to gain independence and mastery. And yeah, that is my case study 1. Thank you all for listening.